Amon-Ra St. Brown first overall. How are you feeling about that?
I mean, I think it's always, when you're talking about the first round, I think it's always a go out and get your guy.
Come on.
Let's go. Oh, man, my heart was beating on that one.
I can just tell you, when we get down to the actual numbers and projections, that team is going to score a lot. There's a lot of fantasy goodness.
There's like 50 feet of shit, and then Kyler and
So forget that. I don't want to draft guys on bad teams.
Doesn't matter. They're going to figure out a way to get the ball good offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith is not a good offensive coordinator.
You guys are team 3 and 4. There's no point to take Stroud, right? Like, is there a point to take Stroud in the best ball format? Oh.
Good evening and welcome to live draft coverage of the FFPC Big Gorilla here on the FFPC YouTube channel. Hi, hello, and welcome. I am your fill-in host for Aiden LaCorey tonight. My name is Eric Balkman. You follow me, hopefully, on the X at Eric Balkman. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, as well as the Insider Access Show presented by the FFPC on the Better Sports Network. This is going to be a lot of fun tonight. I'm joined by two luminaries in the industry, of course, Dave Terpoilli, who you follow on X at Dave Terp, who I believe, and it's probably more than this at this point, this 16-time FFPC league champ. Terp, good evening and welcome. This is your
thing. You got to update that.
I got to look back on it. I got to look back on it. Now, because I'm filling in tonight for Aiden, who has the next 2 weeks off, and this show, by the way, will take the next 2 weeks off, or this show will take next week off as well. Terp, you gotta help me out tonight. I'm expecting you to be the navigator.
Don't worry, man. That's what I'm here for.
Okay.
I got 4 kids sleeping inside right now. I'm sitting in a little wonky setup on the deck down the shore, drinking my wine. I'm ready to go.
All right. He's drinking wine. We're drinking in everything this other guy has to say tonight. Of course, you know him, you love him. The 2016 FFPC main event co-champion. You follow him on the X at _franchise12. Obviously, many more accolades than just a main event champ. Please welcome in from For the Numbers, FTN Fantasy. He is Nelson Sousa. Nelson, good evening. It's been too long, man. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing excellent. We're excited to bring this this program for everybody tonight, and we'll bring it to you live shortly. Once again, for anybody who is not familiar, this is the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. It is a $350 entry. Remember, you're getting a $50 discount on every third team that you sign up for. $1 million grand prize. Drafts going off right now, both live and slow. The 7 Bananas promo is live, which means if you're getting the 7 pick multiple times in a row, you're going to get free best ball entries, free main event entries, free high society entries, and including, but not limited to, a jungle safari for 4 if you get that 7 pick 5 times in a row. Register now at myffpc.com. Myffpc.com is where to go for this. Okay, so let's get into it tonight, guys. I got to bring this up on my screen. Everybody can see it right now. I'm going to do my best to tell you who the cohorts are and who's managing all these leagues tonight. From the one spot, bear with me just for 1 second, guys. We have 626 King Henry. That is Keemstar drafting from the one spot tonight. He takes Jamar Chase. Don't give a shift. Hopefully that's good enough for YouTube there. Takes Bijan Robinson at 2. Don't give a shift is Adam Hahn drafting at the 2 spot. Althea, Bill Wonky, who is no stranger to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. He goes with Terp's guy, Saquon Barkley at the 103. Sutton My Face. God, you guys are really tempting YouTube to demonetize us.
Really good name so far.
Well, you say really good, Terp. I don't know if that's really good. Justin Jefferson goes to Sutton My Face. That is, of course, the incomparable John Terry, a guy who's won a ton of money, 6 figures over the course of his career with the FFPC. Kraken Lava Loops ends up cracking the tight end cherry tonight, as it were. Brock Bowers goes there. Kraken Lava Loops is Mike Shope. Oh, Mike Shope from WGR 550 Sports Talk Radio in Buffalo. He is drafting 5th tonight. He takes Brock Bowers. CeeDee Lamb goes to Anaconda after that. That's Lee Snyder's squad. Jameer Gibbs is a member of Diddley Squat. Gary Morgan, who I believe, I could be wrong on this, I believe is a Joe in the FFPC Pros versus Joe's competition this year. So we'll get into him coming up later on next month. We'll get a little preview of what he likes doing here tonight. Omega 13s takes Malik Neighbors from the 8 spot tonight. That's Jay Wimmer squad. Puka Nakua going to Stormblessed at the 109. Stormblessed is owned by Chris Osborne. The Hawks Nest is Amon-Ra St. Brown from the 10 spot tonight. Kevin Harris, another guy who has been on the HSFF hour before. He drafts 10th tonight. He takes Amon-Ra St. Brown. Our good buddy Mackenzie Kramer, Mac Nova, the ESPN alum, takes Ashton Genty at the 11 spot tonight, followed by Nico Collins, who is the final pick of the 12th spot tonight of the first round. The Fantasy Black Mask takes him. That's Rajamir Singh. Hopefully I'm getting your name right, Rajamir. He takes Nico Collins at the 12th spot. Okay, guys, let's look at this first round. Terp, I'll throw it to you first. Actually, you know what? I'm going to throw it to Nelson first because we know how Terp feels about this guy. And Terp, I'm going to let you weigh in on Barkley after Nelson gets done with his assertion on Saquon Barkley at the 103 tonight. Nelson, I had the number 3 pick in back-to-back KFFSC drafts. I wasn't willing to take Barkley in both of them. I took Justin Jefferson in one, and I had made a FOMO pick of Saquon Barkley at the 103. But I'm guessing Barkley is a player that you will not want to have business with at all at the 103 in fantasy this year.
I mean, just the volume that I do, I'm probably going to have a couple of Saquon Barkley teams, but he's a favorite of mine also, just like Terp, but there's a lot of historical data against him. And I think it was a little bit of an outlier season 2. Some of his touchdowns from where they came on the field. And when you consider Jalen Hurts, double-digit rushing touchdowns, I feel like he got a little bit lucky with his touchdown production when you consider who his quarterback is and the whole, tush push at the goal line and everything. So, he's a guy that I'm probably going to fade and be very light on this season.
Terp, we saw what Barkley did last year. You heard Nelson's argument against him right now. Your thoughts? I know you love your Eagles as they are trying to defend their Super Bowl title this year. But if you had the 3 pick, how strongly are you looking at Saquon Barkley at this point this year?
I'm pretty deep when it comes to drafts so far, and I don't have much Saquon Barkley, which might surprise a lot of people. A lot of things that Nelson said is pretty spot on. The data is not in his favor. I'm not going to full fade the guy. I was in on him last year, but not like as heavy as I probably should have been considering where his price was, because he was the obviously league winner in most cases, when it comes to, the year he had. But I just like other guys a little different, a little better. I'm not going to say I'm going to fade him. I'm not going to say I'm going to like totally avoid him or anything crazy like that, because I do a lot of volume, but I think I'm like 40 plus so far, and I think I might have him on 1 or 2. Okay. I've had a lot of picks up top, so like, it's not a full fade. It's not something I'm going to be, don't take this guy. Like there's other guys in the first round I like a little bit less than Barkley, but I think they're going to throw the ball more this year. I mean, new offensive coordinator is a little bit of an unknown. Everybody says like, oh, it's going to be the same thing as last year. It's going to be this. Push didn't go away, and the schedule is a lot harder. They had a lot of like game scripts that were perfect for them last year. Like Nelson said, the TDs there was a lot of outliers, a lot of like long, just remember that Rams game where he took it to the house right after halftime. I remember it very, 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 very well. That stuff, he's a talented guy, best offensive line in football, best team in football, all that stuff. But I'm going to take other players over him. And, I'll still have some, but I won't be like overweight in the top 5.
I think that's the thing, and fantasy owners have gotten smarter over the years too to not draft based on last year's stats. So I get why people want to stay away from Barkley. It's
very difficult at times not to do that because you see like what a guy like Barkley did last year. Not many people liked him. Everybody was pretty much off Barkley last year. There was a couple people that his price was ridiculous. Like there was times when he was going in the 3rd round, and if you look back and you look at all the terrible picks you made over in the 3rd round. It's gonna keep you up at night, but the talent is there. The offensive line is in my opinion the best in football. The team's the best in football, but the schedule's a lot harder. I think teams are gonna make Jalen Hurts beat him a little bit more, and like I said, the tush push ain't going away. So to me, I'm not fading him, but I'm not going to be crazy overweight him in top 5.
Nelson, I want to go to Team 12 here, and Raj Singh is watching us on YouTube right now. Raj, thank you so much for helping me with your name. I want to talk about his first 2 picks here. Nico Collins goes about a third of a round higher than he normally goes in the FFPC Big Gorilla. This according to FantasyMojo.com. At FantasyMojo on the X, that's Darren Armani, the godfather of the Pros vs. Joes Challenge. Anytime we cite ADP on this program, it's due to his website. If you are playing in the FFPC, strongly urge you to get a subscription to FantasyMojo.com. Nico Collins at the 112, like I said, about a third of a round higher than he normally goes. But are we sleeping on him, Nelson? This is a player who missed some time last year. Obviously does not have Stephon Diggs meddling around with him for target share in Houston. He's got Dalton Schultz, who should scare nobody, and then a pair of rookies in Jaden Higgins and help me out, Noel. Is Jalen Noel?
Jalen Noel.
Thank you. The other guy. And obviously they got Christian Kirk there as well. But this should be wheels up for Nico Collins. His ADP is normally 204. He gets at the 112. Are we sleeping on him? Should Nico Collins, Nelson, be going actually a little bit higher than he normally is?
I mean, with an ADP of a top 10 wide receiver, I don't think we're sleeping on him. I mean, I think that's a fair price where he goes in the draft. I think he can go, any range of, end of the first round to like early second round is where I would expect him to go.
And I think that makes sense. I guess the thing is, and certainly you want to be drafting players not at their ceiling. You want to have the opportunity to draft players that could still exceed ADP, exceed their expected value. And Collins is certainly still being drafted at a spot, in my opinion, that he can still exceed that value. Terp, I don't know if you and I have talked about this yet this season, but I know we've had a conversation about Christian McCaffrey seemingly every single year for the last half decade. Where do you stand on Christian McCaffrey this year? He goes to Raj Singh at the 201 tonight. McCaffrey's normal ADP is 110 in the Big Gorilla over the last 3 days. Your thoughts on McCaffrey going at that 1-2 turn? I'm fine with being in business with him. In fact, I am in business with him at that spot already in a couple of drafts this year. I feel like the Niners schedule feeds into that as well. But I don't know how you feel about CMC.
I would take McCaffrey as high as 7th overall. I think there's 6 players that I like in this format. I like better than him. The 6 that went in the top 6 right there. I would maybe even think about taking him over Barkley in some spots. It's wheels up for Christian McCaffrey for me. I mean, it's really, really, really hard not to like. Obviously, last year burned everybody. Everybody hates him. Yeah. But he's still a first-round talent. He still has number 1 overall potential talent. The schedule's soft. There's really not much behind him. Ayuk isn't going to be back for a while, so they should lean on him. It seems like he's healthy. All the press coming out of San Francisco is positive. Obviously, he's getting up there in age a little bit. He's getting a little banged up, but how many people in the second round where he's getting taken that you could easily say could be the number 1 overall player? I count 2. Christian McCaffrey and Devontae Chain.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't see. Yeah, there's obviously a lot of other guys I like, but you can't really, in my opinion, pick anybody else in the second round that has that ceiling. So to me, give me all the McCaffrey I can get. I know it's a risk, but I'm not worried about last year. I didn't draft him last year. I was mad because I didn't get a lot of 101s, but it didn't burn me. When I was in Vegas in September, I had the number 1 pick, main event, and did not take him. I took Bijan Robinson. So can't worry about last year. Love McCaffrey. It's wheels up for me.
Nelson, what about you on McCaffrey?
Yeah, I mean, his ceiling obviously is, being the top fantasy player this year, but that's what's enticing about him going, where he is, like end of the first, early second round. But, there's warning signs, last year with the Achilles, and then he came back and then he had a PCL injury. And I don't know if it comes down to what do you believe is going to happen? Do you want to get off the bus, a year early, or do you want to stay on and with the thoughts that, hey, if he does stay healthy, he's going to put up a monster season and I'm going to be kicking myself because I passed on him, late in the first round. But he could also be a trap where he's just never 100%, because I can tell you with like Achilles tendonitis and stuff, like that stuff doesn't just magically go away. So it's not like cut and dry where you have a surgery, you repair it, and then you gotta, recuperate, and it takes time, but then you're healthy, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that, it could linger. It could come back. So yeah, right now, summer OTAs, he's looking healthy. People are saying he's fine. And then you get a little bit of work and more practices in, with training camp. And, before you know it, like it could flare up again. So I think it's one of those things where for me, I'll take a couple of shots in like a tournament style like this, like the 350, right? But it's he's a guy that I'm probably going to be more cautious with.
I think that's the way to play it, Nelson. I'm with you on this. Like, it's a FOMO pick for me. I don't want to I don't want to have no shares of McCaffrey, but at the same time, he's not, to me, when you think about his age, and I know there's a lot of other things going his way. I mentioned the schedule and how the Niners are set up for a lot of success this year. But at the same time, you got to understand the wear and tear on this guy, his age, and you have to be responsible with your shares of McCaffrey this year.
Yeah, because and this is, I guess it's actually good that like Terp and I probably disagree on this a little bit, because I look at it as if Terp's saying like he would take him as high as 7, that means that Terp's going to be overweight on McCaffrey this year, because McCaffrey's always going to be there, So if you're not living in the first half of drafts and you've got like pick 7 through 12 in the majority of them, you're gonna have McCaffrey quite a bit. So you have to come to that determination of am I going to be overweight and I'm just going to take him every time, or are you going to pass on him every once in a while?
I feel like you have, like you said, what you said is perfect. I mean, I definitely will be overweight compared to the field on McCaffrey, but you still have to mix in some of these. I mean, like I said, I would take him as high as 7. I would take Chase. I would take Robinson. I would take Jefferson, Bowers, Lamb, probably Malik Neighbors over him. Barkley's close. I'll mix in some Barkley, obviously. Jahmyr Gibbs is a popular guy who's been, steamrolling up draft boards. And I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I have nothing negative to say about Jahmyr Gibbs except for one thing, and that's David Montgomery. If David Montgomery somehow disappears, Jahmyr Gibbs is in argument for number 1 overall. But, with David Montgomery there, I like Gibbs. I'm not fading Gibbs, but to me, McCaffrey, has the risk, but he has nobody. Kyle Shanahan's going to feed him the ball. And if the health is the only thing that worries me about Christian McCaffrey. It's a big risk. But for the volume and, the amount of drafts I do, I'll eat that risk, because when it comes to some of these other guys at the end, like Puka, love Puka, but he has the risk with Devontae Adams, St. Brown, Jameson Williams, maybe he takes that next step this year, and we don't know the offensive coordinator, like who are they going to get the ball to? Nico Collins. I mean, they drafted a bunch of rookies. Is C.J. Stroud what he was through rookie year, or what he was last year? Yeah. It's a little bit of an unknown. And Ashton Genty, I love Ashton Genty. Everybody loves Ashton Genty, but he's still a rookie. He's still going to have his growing pains. Chip Kelly is going to, run a ton of plays, but I just think McCaffrey is, obviously a big risk. And like I mentioned, him and Devon A-Chain, to me, in the second round, obviously I love A.J. Brown. I got nothing negative to say about him. He was my guy and always will be my guy, but I don't see any other guys that have, number 1 overall upside in the second round, just in my opinion.
Just real quick about Genty too, Terp. You make that point that he's still a rookie, and I don't want to light the fuse here and then just walk away from it, because I want to talk to Nelson about Trey McBride versus Brock Bowers here in a second. But Genty is still a rookie. We thought there was a can't-miss rookie last year in Marvin Harrison. Granted, it's 2 different positions. And we saw that Marvin Harrison did miss at his ADP last year. Now, he falls tonight to the 311 to Mackenzie Kramer. And will that work out? I hope so, because I have Marvin Harrison in a few leagues at roughly at that same price point. So I'm excited for him this year. I'm hopeful. But at the same time, even if everything is looking like it's going in a rookie's favor, we still have to allow for the possibility that things don't work out and they don't return your ADP. And Ashton Genty going in the first round, I think he'll pay off on that. But yeah, there's a non-zero chance that he doesn't, and you got to be prepared for that as well. Nelson, I want to ask you about this. Brock Bowers versus Trey McBride. Tonight, Bowers goes at the 105 to Mike Shope from WGR 550 Buffalo Sports Talk Radio, and of course the Deep End podcast. Trey McBride goes at the 202 to Mackenzie Kramer. I think about how efficient Bowers was last year, and then I also contrast that with how McBride basically did not get a receiving touchdown until week 16 or week 17 or whatever it was last year. And I wonder, should these guys be going closer together? I've heard smart people say, I will not take Brock Bowers where he's going. I would much rather have Trey McBride a half round or 2/3 of a round later. How do you compare and contrast these two guys as far as their value and their ADP, where they're going right now, Bowers versus McBride, Nelson?
Yeah, I think there's some regression there, positive regression with McBride because of the touchdowns. So if you're talking like if he could have, just a solid year and he scored 8 touchdowns, let's say, I think we would be having a conversation of who's the first tight end off the board. Mm-hmm. So, I'm fine with either guy. Like I could choose either guy. Like I don't think Bowers should be going several picks ahead of McBride. So I do agree with that sentiment that they should be closer together. But I just don't, even though I get it with the 1.5 for tight ends, I don't like drafting tight ends in the first round. So, the years with like Gronk and Jimmy Graham and, this year now with Bowers and even with Kelsey for so long, I rather get that wide receiver or that running back. And then for me, I prefer to find like my tight end later in the draft.
When you say your tight end, does that mean you are looking for your number one tight end later in the draft? Or you just mean like, hey, I'll in tight end premium format, I'll grab a guy that's 12th or 15th off the board as my second tight end?
No, like I'll take a second tight end if it makes sense, but it's one of those things. I'm just saying like these tight ends that go off the board, like Bowers, like I'm fine with him. Like he's good. He's going to be solid. The talent, I think he gets a QB upgrade with Geno. So I'm making a case for him, but at the same time, I'm just not taking him over CD and Gibbs and a couple of those wide receivers. That's just my point that I'm making. Like McBride, if I'm in the back half, I feel like if I don't really love the receivers back there, I could see myself, talking myself into taking McBride in the second round. Like I think that's like a better price than if I was in like, 5th overall, I'm taking, Gibbs or CD there.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And I think that's fair. And that's an honest assessment. We are into the 5th round here. The 4th tight end has finally gone off the board. Right around ADP to Althea. That is Althea is owned by tonight Bill Wonky, who is drafted his second tight end to go with George Kittle, Sam Laporta, the 4th tight end off the board. We shall see, Nelson, how that affects the rest of the draft. You've obviously won the main event before. You've climbed to the mountaintop. You are no stranger to these drafts. When you are a team in a draft like this in the Big Gorilla, and you don't have a tight end, and you see somebody double up at tight end in the 5th round, how much does that impact your draft strategy to make sure that you get a tight end? Or is that sort of a non-starter for you? Like it doesn't affect you at all?
No, I don't get stubborn. One of the things that I've learned is once I see a couple of teams doubling up at tight end, it's a matter of inventory, right? Supply and demand. Mm-hmm. So once a couple of teams double up at tight end, I know that those tight ends are the next group, the next couple of tiers are going to go earlier than they would in a normal draft, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm circling the 2 or 3 guys that are like, okay, these are the tight ends I believe in, and I'm going to push them up around or whatever to make sure I get one. Which
makes sense, obviously, when you're trying to, I don't want to say a balanced team, because sometimes the balanced teams just finish right in the middle. But you want to make sure that you're not screwing yourself over at a position. And that's, I think, what we'll be watching for tonight, to see how Bill Wonky doubling up on tight end at 503 tonight affects all these other teams tonight. We saw Anaconda draft a tight end at the 506 tonight in Travis Kelce. That is Lee Snyder's squad. And we'll see how it affects the back end of the draft. Hawks Nest also getting
the
Hawkins
other thing too, Eric, that I wanted to say was you just don't want to be taking a 0 or having very low scores out of the tight end position in a tight end premium contest. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay. I like taking just like a solid tight end if I kind of get shut out from like the elite guys, as long as I have someone going into the season, and then I'll try to make it a point, obviously, like in fab and everything, to upgrade that position as the year goes on. And then all that matters is you get your team into the shootout, and then in the shootout, those 3 weeks, if you've got, that right tight end that comes on strong in the second half, then you'll be okay. So I just believe that you don't necessarily need to have Bowers or McBride to win this contest. And at the same time, like I know to win this contest, you can't just be taking a bagel at the tight end position either.
No, you can't. I mean, you got to have some kind of production. Now, if you want to talk about not investing into the position, that's fine. But then you got to make sure you hit on those guys in the mid to late rounds if you want to do that. I know we're into the 6th round here, but I want to go back to the 3rd round and talk about this 310 pick by the Hawks Nest. That's Breece Hall, who ended up going to Kevin Harris there. This has been a guy that Nelson has seen his ADP fluctuate quite a bit this drafting season. Obviously, we saw how involved Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen were at the end of last season. But now we have a new regime there. It is Aaron Glenn. It is a new offense, a new OC, a new everything there, essentially, new quarterback as well. And I think the vibes that I've gotten out of New York, it seems I'm leaning towards Breece Hall being a 3-down guy there, and these other guys sort of play supplementary roles rather than, being a part of that first-string offense. Your thoughts on Breece Hall at the 310 tonight at running back 13? Is this a value? How would you treat Breece Hall in an FFPC draft?
Yeah, so one of the arguments that people are making is like, oh, Justin Fields, running quarterback, that's a negative for Breece Hall. Like, I don't believe that. Just look at Derrick Henry with Lamar Jackson last year and what he did. So I actually think it's a good thing for Breece. What matters to me is not so much like, all the talk of, or like Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, and the coaching staff talking. I'm looking for that breakaway speed that Breece had a couple of years ago and pre-injury. And what I noticed last year was he was getting caught from behind on a lot of his runs. So I need to see that explosion from him, that breakaway speed. Because I do believe that he will be a 3-down back. He will be the passing down back. Braylon Allen, to me, he actually faded towards the end of the year. Like I wasn't really impressed with him. I think he hit like a rookie wall in the second half of the year where he wasn't really that good. But Breece wasn't really that good either. So I look at it as if Breece is healthy and he gets some of his explosion back, I think he's going to be a pretty good back. And I think like late 3rd round there, 4th round, I think that's a good price for him.
Yeah, and it makes, I mean, like with Breece Hall there, this is another pick. Again, this is a managed league, right? Where it's not best ball. You got to decide when to start these players and when not to. I think by and large, you're going to know when to start Breece Hall, which is not something I could say with some of the other 3rd round running backs. I mean, maybe not in this draft, but in some other drafts as well. Terp, I want to bring you back in here and talk about the Chiefs wide receivers here. We saw Rashee Rice go at the 304 tonight to John Terry's squad, and then we see Xavier Worthy go off the board at 402 to Mackenzie Kramer. This is a weird kind of passing attack this year when drafting for fantasy, because we know Travis Kelce did not have the greatest year last year until Rashee Rice went down, and then he was heavily targeted, put up a ton of stats. But it wasn't like he was making all these plays because of his athleticism. Now we see he's on Ozempic or something. I don't know. Or Taylor Swift, as John Terry's pointed out, doesn't allow him to eat anymore. He's lost 20, 25 pounds, whatever it was, and he comes back to an offense that now will have both Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown, who we kind of forget about from last year.
Don't forget about Travis Kelce.
And Travis, well,
if Taylor lets him out.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about with Travis Kelce here. Let's talk about these receivers here, specifically Worthy and Rice. 304 and 402 tonight. Do you have a feeling on which one of these players you like better as far as their ADPs go?
It's definitely Rice, but I think people are just trashing Worthy more than they should. I mean, everybody is saying it's Rice. Rice is the one that's storming up draft boards, getting in the second round in some drafts. I could see him getting higher as we get later in the summer if press continues to be as positive as it's been. I have nothing negative to say about Rice. I mean, he was on pace last year. Obviously, it's a small sample size, but he was on pace to, possibly be the wide receiver one. I mean, it was in the range of possibilities. Will the Chiefs start throwing the ball more? It's possible. Will Mahomes, that offense last year was really painful to watch. Really, really painful to watch. Ugly up and down. No matter what, there was no league winners out of that offense. Kareem Hunt was plugging away. Kelce was Worthy really didn't do anything until the Super Bowl. Everybody's going to remember the Super Bowl, but that also was in garbage time when the game didn't matter. Hollywood Brown was really a non-factor. Had a little, some flashes here and there, but nothing crazy. But, there's rumors that the Chiefs might try to open it up a little bit, get Mahomes back to how he was a couple years ago when he was, more flashy. But you have to look at it from a perspective from Kansas City. Will they really do that? Why would they? They continue to just walk to the Super Bowl doing it the way they're doing it. Are they really going to put Mahomes at risk back there throwing the ball 30-plus times a game and, worrying about that? I don't know. But to me, Rice is the pick. But people badmouth the Worthy got to stop. He's talented. And if they figure out a way to get him the ball, he has game-breaking ability. He's a lot easier clicking best ball to me than a managed league. But, I mean, Rice is it's really hard not to like him this year because when the guys that are get drafted around him, do you trust Rice over – I mean, I like Garrett Wilson, but you trust Garrett Wilson over Rashee Rice? No. Tyreek Hill? Like Tyreek Hill, but no. I'm taking Rice over all those guys, even T. Higgins. I mean, yeah, T. Higgins won people a ton of money at the end of the season, but you going to take T. Higgins over Rashee Rice? I'm not.
I actually did in a draft earlier today, for what it's worth.
But you also do a lot of volume, so you're allowed to do that. So
I'm actually taking Harrison over Rice this year.
Marvin Harrison over Rashee Rice.
I love Marvin Harrison. I got burned last year with Marvin Harrison. I'm trying to forget that. But Kyler Murray, man.
Because here's the thing. If you look at ADP last year, right? So let's rewind and look where Harrison was getting drafted and where Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. were getting drafted. So
crazy.
What the public was saying, right? Everyone that was drafting was saying that the range of outcomes was that Marvin Harrison was the number one rookie wide receiver. That's who everyone wanted. He was going at the 1-2 turn, right? Basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sure was.
Middle of the second round. Yeah. Okay. Now the rules are reversed because he had a down year. Those other two had a monster year. Okay. Nothing. I'm not saying that where they're going this year, there's nothing wrong with it. But what I'm saying is why after just one rookie season why is the public saying the range of outcomes is not there for Marvin Harrison? So I look at it as it's more of like a post-hype opportunity to be drafting Harrison in the end of the third round. So to me, that scoring ability and him being just as good as Neighbors and Thomas, if not better, that potential is still there. I don't think that went away.
To me, the only thing holding it back is Kyler Murray. I just don't think he's a good quarterback. I've always been a hater. Last year I got on board. I don't know. I mean, new OC,
Well, here's my thing on Marvin Harrison. I just feel like he was asked to be Superman last year, and I don't think it takes the most special of special players to do that as rookies. How many times did we see him thrown fades down the sideline? where not only did he have to contend with the corner and sometimes the safety, but the sideline as well. So I just feel like the stuff that he can excel at, these crossers and these posts and the sluggos, like we hardly saw that last year. And I think Arizona, Sigmund Bloom's football guys always says, never assume rational coaching. But these guys have to realize that he was not utilized in the best way in order not only for his fantasy goodness, but for the Arizona Cardinals to win football games. So I believe that there's a bounce back coming. I'm with Nelson on this as well. Barney Newkirk, I want to throw this to you, too. Barney Newkirk wants to know what you're drinking tonight.
Just red wine.
Red
cab.
wine. Cab.
Yeah, I'm gonna mix in a beer here soon.
Right. Called the cab.
Nothing too crazy. I'm on like kind of vacation with the in-laws and the family.
If I know Barney, anything outside of a Busch Light is probably crazy.
That's just not my cup of tea anymore. 20 years ago, Busch Light, Natty Light, all that nasty stuff, that was good. But now I'm trying to be a little more classy at my old age.
Yeah, that's what happens. And Barney's very thrilled with that. We were just talking with the Chiefs offense this year, and Nelson, Jay Wimmers, who's drafting tonight, has a Stella. And Barney, by the way, Keystone Light. So I sold.
Disgusting, man.
I was a little bit more aggressive with the Busch Light.
That's probably like $11 a case. Just absolute. Bleh.
I'm not a Keystone guy. I'm not a Busch Light guy either. At the expense of maybe ruining some stuff for the sponsors here. But the Busch lattes are like as low as I go. The Keystone Light, that's right out for me.
I can't even drink them at a tailgate. No.
No, I mean, tailgate's a little bit different because at that point I'll force anything down my gullet if that's all.
Fair.
Nelson, I want to get back to the Chiefs offense with you. This is a mystery wrapped in a riddle, smothered in secret sauce this year. Patrick Mahomes, who I think a lot of people would say is the best football player on the planet, and yet tonight he has not been selected yet, and we are in the 7th round. You have the Chiefs running game, which at times carried them at points during the last couple of seasons, and we have nary a Chiefs running back drafted yet tonight. And then we have the passing game. Travis Kelce, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer, maybe the greatest tight end in league history, and he is now tight end 5 at his age. We already talked about Xavier Worthy. We already talked about Rashee Rice, and you throw in Hollywood Brown into this. How are you handling the Chiefs offense this year? What should we expect from a fantasy standpoint, Nelson? And then are there any targets or specific fades in Kansas City for you drafting in 2025?
I think it's a buying opportunity for the Chiefs, actually. I think this is the cheapest that Mahomes has gone ever, maybe, where he's got for ADP this year. I find myself that I'm probably going to own quite a bit of Mahomes this year. And I think he's got the weapons. And, I think what we're seeing is a reaction, and rightfully so, that offense was really ugly last year. And they were content with winning with their defense, running the ball with, an older Kareem Hunt for, 3.3 yards a carry. It was just ugly. So I think if you've got Xavier Worthy in his second year, you got Rice, if he proves that he's healthy and good to go in training camp, you got old man Kelce back, who, still going to be, solid, middle of the field. And then you got Hollywood Brown. I think, and you got Mahomes back there. I think like there's opportunity there where they become a little more pass heavy than what they've shown in the last couple of years.
I want to bring this up, guys, and I'm going to wait for Mackenzie Kramer to make his pick here. And he's going to make us wait. Jonnu Smith is the pick at the 7-Eleven tonight. So now we have 3 teams doubled up on tight end. Don't give a shift from the 2 spot tonight, who is Adam Hahn, has taken Njoku and Andrews in the 6th and 7th round. We already talked about Althea. That's Bill Wonky getting Kittle and Laporta. And now Mac Nova, Trey McBride, Jonnu Smith. Fantasy Black Mask ends up taking Patrick Mahomes here at naked, I believe naked. Yeah, naked at the 801. And I was thinking, Terp, that Mackenzie was going to have the choice here between Mahomes and Kyler Murray if he wanted to go with the Mahomes-Worthy stack or the Kyler Murray-McBride-Harrison stack. 30 seconds. We're going to find out here. Terp, what would you do? Is this a Murray pick for you for Mac?
I was waiting on this question because I wanted to ask Nelson this question in a little bit, but
it has to
me,
be. I mean, you got
it has to be Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
You invested in McBride, you invested in Harrison. How do you not invest in the quarterback? It goes with it. I mean, you're betting the team on your top 2 of your top 3 picks. I mean, if you took Mahomes, that would have been okay. But like, my question.
Here's the thing. Sorry, Terp. I'm interrupting.
Keep going. Go ahead. No, my question was going to come back to you is like, if you're would you take Harrison and McBride on the same team without Murray?
I would take them. I would take them on the same team, but I'm getting Murray because the way I'm looking at it is if I'm investing that kind of draft capital, 2nd and 3rd round picks, the only way for those guys to pay off is if Kyler Murray's freaking good this year.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not, you're losing.
Yeah,
you're in trouble. I wouldn't say losing, but
you might as well put your eggs in all in one basket.
Your team's probably dead.
Yeah.
I will say this in regards to Mac Nova, obviously taking Matthew Golden here as we see at the 802 as wide receiver 42 instead of Murray. If you look at the Big Gorilla ADP, Kyler Murray normally does not go on average until the 10-10. So technically, from a mathematical
going to get him.
That's the point. That's the point I wanted to make.
11 is just, some of these teams just like to get cute with unstacked quarter. Like I've always talked about in these tournaments, if you're playing for $1 million, stacking is the Bible to me, and it's something I will always do. Obviously, values and stuff fall, but like I put out a tweet a little bit ago with Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow was a guy that I didn't have much of last year. It burned me, it hurt me, pretty bad. But if you're going to draft Joe Burrow, to me, you have to have T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. Obviously, I know there's roads where you can get there without it, but when you're playing for $1 million and Joe Burrow is the quarterback, he's probably going to go nuts in week 17 or whatever it is. Guess who else is going to go nuts? Chase and Higgins. So, yeah, you can, there's a 5% chance that, you can outweigh that, but I don't see the range of outcomes where you take Burrow without one of those two.
Yeah. I mean, for that particular case with Cincinnati and Burrow, look at last year. You could have basically they carried you, so you could have had Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and Chase Brown all on the same team, and they carried you to a championship.
And that's an unlikely situation because 4 guys on the same team usually
very hard
don't
to do. Yeah,
especially how they got there.
But I think it's reasonable to do it with stacking your quarterback with like the 2 prime receiving options in the offense.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens here with Mackenzie Kramer's squad. We're obviously watching it with bated breath on the edge of our seats. Matthew Golden at the 802. Guys, how crazy would it be if he ends up grabbing Kyler Murray, if it comes all the way back to him and Kyler Murray's still out there, which the mojo on Murray would say that's going to happen. And he could still get another stack with Jordan Love as his backup quarterback if he wants to go that way with Matthew Golden. That'd be fascinating and stuff we're definitely going to be following here tonight. Nelson, let's throw this to you. San Francisco wide receivers. We saw a pair of them go off the board in the 7th round here. Ricky Pearsall, the number 3 receiver to Raj Singh behind DK Metcalf and Nico Collins at the 7-12. And 6 picks before that, Juwan Jennings, the number 4 receiver for Anaconda. Anaconda is owned by, is that Lee Snyder's team? I forgot that. Lee Snyder is drafting there as well. So when you talk about these San Francisco wide receivers, knowing that Brandon Ayuk is probably going to be missing the start of the season, knowing that George Kittle was awesome last year, that doesn't guarantee that he's going to be anything this year. I think he's going to be good. And in fact, if you read about this Vesper training thing that he's been on, that's wild stuff. And maybe not suitable for work for parts of it. But when you consider that guy has gotten hurt and he's no stranger, I mean, he's been a spike week guy in best ball. This is not best ball. This is managed leagues. So when you talk about those 3 guys, now you're talking about Jennings versus Pearsall in the 7th round. Do you have a strong lean between Jennings or Pearsall this year, Nelson?
Pearsall. That's the guy I like, but I'm fine with Jennings, but I would be drafting Pearsall over Jennings right now. And I'm off of Ayuk. Kittle's expensive. We already talked about McCaffrey. I'm going to be light on McCaffrey. So, to invest in this offense that I think is a good offense, I got to be on other guys, right? and it's going to be Pearsall and Jennings.
Sean Green is he likes Jennings over Pearsall, and I think this is something that we just will be waging back and forth across the rest of the summer.
It's definitely a battle that will determine a lot of fantasy football leagues, in my opinion, because I'm also totally out on Ayuk. I won't have any.
Right.
People say he's one of the best picks in drafts right now. Why? Because he might come back at a certain period and be Brandon Ayuk of 2 years ago. Because Brandon Ayuk last year was not good.
I mean, if his ADP tanks, I'll take him at some point and just have him as like a bench guy waiting like in the second half if he comes back and he can get healthy. Yeah, I'll be
on a
interested,
deep team, but like where he's being drafted now, like I'm out. I need more bad information to come out for me to be buying into Ayuk. I'm a Jennings over Pearsall guy, but I'll take both because both have great opportunity. I definitely think Jennings. I agree with Bob, who just posted in the chat. I think that Purdy's guy is going to be Jennings. I think where he's being drafted is a guy. I liked him coming out of college. I think he was just way underdrafted. And then Pearsall, the talent's there, the measurables are there, but can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the field? I mean, soft tissue already. Definitely something to worry about. And, Kyle Shanahan is going to trust him. Talent's there, very, very talented kid. We saw flashes in college, but I'm Jennings over Pearsall.
My whole thing with Ayuk is regardless of how good you think he's going to be, regardless of when you think he's coming back, he is still coming off an ACL. People coming back their first year off ACL tears, it has been a very checkered history. It has not been a history littered with a lot of success. So I think you have to take that into the equation. Now, regarding Jennings versus Pearsall, I think this kind of dictates what type of fantasy player you are. Are you the type of player that you saw it with Jennings over the course of the entire last season, and you're willing to stake your claim on Jennings this year? That's fine. But maybe you're the type of player who believes in draft capital, who believes in pedigree, who believes in late season surges. All three of those relate to Ricky Pearsall. And then in that case, you're taking Pearsall. So it kind of depends upon what type of fantasy player you are when we're talking about Jennings versus Pearsall as well. That's for the Niners right now. I want to talk about, I had something loaded up here. Let's do Tucker Kraft here, Terp. King Henry ends up taking 2 running backs, a quarterback, 4 receivers, and then gets Tucker Kraft at the tight end 12 with the final pick of the 8th round. I remain skeptical. I know there's a lot of helium for Tucker Kraft right now with some of the stuff that's come out of Green Bay and talking about how it's going to be a big season for Kraft. Man, I don't know. I just see all these wide receivers in Green Bay, and then you add in Golden, you add on Savion Williams, and I feel like best ball. I'm okay with Kraft and where he's going, but man, trying to start Kraft every single week on an offense that shifted to a power running game last season that may or may not be continuing that plan of attack for offense this year, and knowing that there's all these other guys that are capable. I don't know if I like Tucker Kraft as a back-end starter, but I know that's not a popular opinion right now, Terp. How do you feel about Tucker Kraft as the tight end 12 tonight? To King Henry, that is Keemstar squad.
Tucker Kraft is my second highest tight end owned in this range. You talk about the receivers, but are they really like guys to worry about? And I'm not saying Tucker Kraft is, George Kittle, but he's shown flashes, a lot of positive press coming out, where he's being drafted. I think the tight end position is extremely deep this year. If you miss out on one of the top, Bowers, McBride area, and maybe you think Kittle's being a little highly drafted, in this Ingram, Njoku, Kraft, Andrews, Jonnu Smith range, I like all these guys. Njoku is probably my favorite out of all of them, but, Tucker Kraft is second. I saw it last year. I really like what he brought to the table. I know Luke Musgrave's still there, and I know the rookie receivers are still there, and this is still a run-first team with Josh Jacobs. But I really do like Kraft, where he's being drafted. If I'm going to take a shot and not get the top guys, Tucker Kraft is definitely a guy that I'll be targeting.
So how much of his production was a byproduct of all the injuries to the receiving core?
Yeah, that's fair. Christian Watson, my Lord and Savior. I'm his biggest fan. Nobody likes Christian Watson. It's been really hard in drafts not to click Christian Watson's name this year. I'm really, really upset about it.
I'll say this. I'll say this about Watson. That dude went down to Madison, Wisconsin, to get his, to find out why all these soft tissue injuries keep happening. And they found out one thigh muscle or quad muscle, I can't remember which it was significantly more massive than the other one. So that's why he kept hurting. And he did not miss any time last year due to soft tissue injuries, right? Nothing. And then he tears his ACL in week 18 against the Bears. And obviously that's going to knock him out. I still think the majority of the season, maybe the whole season. But Nelson, regarding Watson, it's not like he was an alpha dog when he was in there, too, and he was not targeted as such by Jordan Love.
Should have been, man. He should have been. God.
Yeah.
Love that, man.
No, I don't think anyone's really going to be, an alpha dog, and I don't think Golden is really that guy either. He I watched him, his film in college, and, he's a speed guy, right? And he's a game breaker with his speed, but he's not going to command like a ton of targets, right? He's very similar in the mold of Zay Flowers and Worthy coming out. Yep. I think he's going to have spike weeks, but he's going to be inconsistent, especially his rookie year. I'm just saying that, do you expect a bounce back year from Jaden Reed? Musgrave got hurt last year. If he's back healthy, I'm just saying, like, I could see where Kraft actually does not produce, he doesn't go and have a better year than last year and actually maybe goes down a little bit. And then that 8th round pick doesn't look as great. So there's some tight ends that are going to be going off the board. I'm not going to name them, but there's some tight ends that go after him that I like just as much. So I just don't like. It's one of those things, like, I have a hard time actually clicking on his name just because of where his ADP is and the players around him.
Nelson, I'm totally with you on Tucker Kraft. I think that there's, to your point, there's 3 or 4 guys after he goes in drafts that I don't necessarily like better, but I like them just the same. And I can get 2 rounds of draft capital on that. So I'm down for that 100%. Guys, we have to talk about the continuing story of Mackenzie Kramer's Mac Nova squad at the 11 spot.
He got him. All's right in the world.
He gets Kyler Murray at 9-11. It comes all the way back, quarterback 8 off the board to Murray. So he pairs Murray with Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison. God only knows that he's going to get Trey Benson and Michael Wilson later on in this draft, and he will be Arizona Cardinals West. Or
Eric, he's got Worthy, Flowers, and Golden. Does he have like a certain wide receiver profile that he likes?
I would say so.
Seriously.
I would say so. And the thing is, too, with this is you would think that. Well, okay, Nelson, I'll let you lead into this as well. But he has got Genty and Mixon, and wide receiver has been a very prevalent focus on his draft. Obviously, already having 2 tight ends, that makes the tight end position easier. But when you look at his wide receivers, Harrison, Worthy, Flowers, Golden, and now Emeka Egbuka in the 10-02, which I don't think is necessarily congruent with the other wide receiver picks, except for maybe Marvin Harrison here too. When you look at that squad, Team 11, Mackenzie Kramer, Nelson, what do you look at, or how do you look at it? Is this a formidable team, not only winning this league, but to win the $1 million in the Big Gorilla?
I don't mind the team construction side of things. So, like, forget the actual players, right? But just from a team construction standpoint, I think if he's drafting it the way he is right now, he obviously has some running back targets that he likes later in the draft that he'll pick off. But he wants to make sure that, like, his wide receiver room is deep. He wants to make sure he's got a playable second, tight end that you can put in the flex that acts as basically like a wide receiver. So, and then he's got Murray, he's got the 2 running backs that he can hang his hat on. So, I'm totally fine with how he built the team.
Terp, how about you? How do you feel about Mac Nova's squad here at 11?
No issues whatsoever. I mean, the only issue that I see a little bit is, like Nelson said, Xavier Worthy, Zay Flowers, and Matthew Golden are all the same player. They're, in my opinion, really good best ball players. Mm-hmm. I don't know about managed leagues clicking them every week because you have the Marvin Harrison, who I know we talked about him earlier, my highest owned receiver right now, even though I talked a little crap about him. But between Worthy, Flowers, and Golden, you have a bunch of guys that they're probably going to have to play for you, and they're going to be really, really tough every week clicks. You're probably going to get that wrong a lot. and even Emeka Aboku, like real talented. I probably butchered his last name because I'm terrible at names. But all those 4 guys are, I like all of them, but in a different format, because when it comes to actually clicking the button, which I say a ton, they're just really hard clicks. Because Zay Flowers, is he ever going to be a featured guy for the Ravens? I think so.
The other thing to keep in mind with Flowers, and I own him in a couple of dynasty spots, is they just inked Rashad Bateman to a contract extension. Mark Andrews is still there starting.
Likely's still there.
Isaiah Likely was the expectations from his head coach is that he'll be an all-pro this year. You have Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell, who's getting some positive pub. So there's a lot of things working against.
You have the Lamar Jackson rushing ability that takes, and you have just probably one of the, if not the best, one of the best teams in the AFC that will have a lot of positive game scripts. So
they fooled us for that opening week game. What was that? That was the Thursday night game, right? Where they targeted the crap out of Flowers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then like all the drafts after that, he moved up like a full round.
You look
Flowers is the guy that's a really hard click for me. I've taken him in the 6th round a couple of drafts because I think that's an okay spot because he does have that big ability. When it comes to just ball in his hands type of game breaking. But is he going to get enough time? Is he going to get enough touches? Is he going to get enough targets in that offense? I just have my doubts. There's just other guys that are being drafted around him with just a little bit more upside for me. I'm probably out on Zay Flowers.
I'll say this about Flowers to Nelson's point last year. He ends up getting 10 targets in that opening night game on Thursday night, 6 catches, only 37 yards, but he did get 10 targets. After that game, he saw double-digit targets only 3 more times that season, the last of which was October 27th. So he went the entire month of November, December, and January without a 10-target game. He caught 6 of those passes. He had 4 games after that with more than 6 catches. And the last one, you guessed it, October 27th. So we have fresh in our mind Zay Flowers not crushing it the last 2.5 months of the season. And I don't think anything's fundamentally changed there as well. So if you're expecting him to get back to what he was doing the first half of 2024, I would say, why? I don't know if that's what's going to happen this year. And certainly the ADP is not unpalatable at this point. Tonight, he ends up going at 602, wide receiver 28. I think that's fine. I don't think that's an overdraft by Mac Nova. But I also understand that we have to sort of limit our expectations, understanding that Flowers could have a massive year and definitely outpace that ADP, but I don't know how likely it is to happen.
That's a good segue.
Pun
expectations.
intended.
That's expectations, because a popular name that's been all over Twitter recently is Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is, the sexy new toy in Jacksonville. They obviously traded a good amount to get him. Where do you stand on Travis Hunter? Because he's fallen down draft boards. People are worried about him playing defense. Yeah. It's where he's being drafted around guys like Jerry Jeudy and Chris Olave and Odunze and Ridley. A question was asked by Mac Nova how he flipped the coin between Flowers, Sutton, and Hunter. If you had a coin and you were going to flip it, who would you want out of that? Who would you want the coin to land on? Sutton, Hunter, or Zay?
Now, Nelson, I'll throw it to you. This kind of depends upon what kind of drafter you are, but given that this is not like a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, I usually go with the upside here. This is a 6th round pick, and he ends up taking Flowers. I probably would have gone with Hunter, understanding that, maybe it's not the greatest pick in the world, but I think that's the highest ceiling, and maybe you shouldn't be looking into ceiling in the 6th round, but I am. And I think Hunter is the mystery box. He is door number 3. He is the player that you just don't know what to expect this year. So I kind of know what Flowers is. I kind of know what Sutton is. Don't know what Hunter is. And that's why it would have been Hunter for me. What would it have been for you?
It would have been Sutton, I think. And then I would have considered Hunter. And like Zay, I'm fine with that price. So I'm not going to shit on him. I'm just saying that it was just kind of funny how he had that 10 target game to, for everyone to watch pre-week 1. And then like you said, 3 more games that he had double-digit targets. It's just kind of funny how that happened. But yeah, I think Sutton, Hunter, any of those guys, or Zay. Like I'm not saying that like he made a mistake taking Zay. We really don't know. And Hunter is he's the unknown, like you said, Balky. And I just know that you have Brian Thomas there.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. Zay Flowers, the issue with him is this. I think throughout the season, you have Bateman there, you added Hopkins, you have Mark Andrews, you got Likely. Oh, and by the way, you have Derrick Henry, carrying the ball along with Lamar Jackson. So his upside's limited. The key with Zay Flowers is he has the type of upside that in a 3-week sprint, he can help you win a championship. Like I think he is capable of putting up like back-to-back weeks of like 25 points in the shootout. So that's what I'm looking for is like that upside, not necessarily like, his season-long upside is capped to me because of all the competition for targets and Derrick Henry there. Mm-hmm. With Travis Hunter, he's going to play corner and he's got Brian Thomas Jr. there. For his competition for targets. So I think all these guys kind of have question marks. Sutton might be the one guy, though, that in that offense, he could turn into the alpha in the passing game. I don't think like any of those other guys are like, super talented guys that warrant, having a bunch of targets week in, week out.
I'll bring this up too as sports betting man. That's Lance Turbis, former HSFF hour, wrote of his high
Vegas Lance.
Yeah. He said, don't forget DeAndre Hopkins when we're talking about the Baltimore Ravens offense too. And he said he's setting the over-under at 7 touchdowns for Hopkins this year. I may be a fool, but I am taking the under.
Easy under for me.
So I want to bring this up with I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Terp, I'm going to ask you about the Giants running backs in a second, and then Nelson, I get your thoughts on them as well. But I want to go back to Chris Olave, who was taken in the 6th round, specifically at the 6'10" by Bill Wonky, and Barney Newkirk watching us on Facebook tonight. He wants to know what our take is on Chris Olave. Nelson, I'll let you lead this off. Olave, super talented player. Draft pedigree is there. His rookie season was unbelievable. The question marks, the concussions, number 1, Tyler Shook at quarterback, number 2, number 3, how good is this offense going to be? And number 4, dealing with a new OC, new head coach this year as well. There are some question marks with Olave. There's some positive signs with Olave. And I think this is the type of player that is a flag planter, whether you believe in him or not. How are you feeling about Olave this season, Nelson?
I'm off of Olave this year. The injury question marks with the concussion, and my thing is like I stay away from shitty teams, shitty offenses, shitty quarterback play. So there's just other receivers that go right after him that I rather have over him. So give me Ridley, Waddle, Jacoby Myers, Jennings, Purcell. I would take all those guys over Olave. I just week in, week out, like whoever it is, Rattler or Shuck, like at quarterback, like I just can't picture that offense like moving the ball and having like much success this year.
What do you make of that, Terp, with Olave? And you heard Nelson's take on it. Are you closer to him on the Olave spectrum or the opposite end?
Yeah, there's just guys around him that I just like a lot more. Judy, Ridley, Hunter, Waddle, Myers, Jennings, Addison, Pearsall. I mean, I probably would take the upside of Golden. Obviously, Diggs. I'm not really on Debo this year, but I just don't think they'll be very good. And there's who's playing quarterback, an unknown in the rookie, or Spencer Rattler. Like, yeah, you could sell yourself the story that they're going to stink and they're going to be behind, and you can get a ton of volume, but concussions is obviously something you have to worry about. I mean, he's one hit from being out for the season. It's not just like his career could be over after the injury, the concussions are no joke, and he's had his ailments with him. So, will I mix him in here and there? Probably, but I'll need his price to go down before I would even think about that. I could never click him over Calvin Ridley. I could never click him over Jerry Jeudy. I could never click him over Jalen Waddle. I mean, you might be able to argue some of the other guys, but Calvin Ridley's probably one of my favorite clicks this year.
Olave is the second wide receiver drafted by Althea tonight, Bill Wonke's squad. But don't forget, at the time he took Chris Olave, already had 2 running backs and 2 receivers on his squad as well. Terp, I said I was going to ask you about the Giants running backs. I'm going to do that right now because they went back-to-back tonight. The 905 was Cam Scadaboo to Mike Shope from WGR 550 Buffalo Sports Talk Radio at running back 34. One pick after that, the Anaconda, Lee Snyder, snags Tyrone Tracy as running back 35. When you look at Scadaboo v. Tracy this year, are you of the opinion that these guys should be close together in ADP, that you will want 50-50 in your shares of them this year? Or do you believe one of these guys has separated himself from the other one? Nelson, I'm going to let you tackle this in a second, but Terp, I'll let you lead things off here.
This is one of my hottest takes of the offseason and one I'm worried about if Nelson agreeing here with me because I do take what he says as very, very important. But Tyrone Tracy is my 95%. Cam Scadaboo is my 5%. Tracy, the fumbling, obviously, is something you have to worry about. But I like what I saw last year. I liked the ability, the pass catching ability. The offense scares me, obviously, with Wilson running it. And obviously, if they're just terrible and they go to dart, you got to worry about that. But the price is, to me, very, very good. I could see the argument to mix both in. But if I want to take a stand, I feel like this is a good spot to take it. I was a big Tracy guy coming out of college. He's a guy that I think has the ability to really, really, really take it to the next level. If the Giants are relevant, obviously, if they go right to the toilet, they might just try to give the rookie some touches. But to me, Tracy's definitely one of my highest end running backs right now, and I'm worried what's coming next from Nelson.
Yeah, Nelson, I'll let you weigh in on that Scadaboo versus Tracy conversation as well.
I think the answer is neither. I think it's going to be an offense that, supports Malik Neighbors, and they have a tough schedule this year. And I think if those two guys stay healthy, I think it's going to be a committee. And they go at a decent price where, I'll mix them in here and there. My issue is there's running backs that went after them in this draft that I have ranked higher than them. So what that tells me is I'm just not going to have much of Tracy or Scadaboo.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean, like when you consider some of the other guys going, like look at some of the guys that went after, ETN and Bashal Tutin in Jacksonville. You had Isaac Guerrero. If you don't believe in Christian McCaffrey, that's a certain pick that you can make there. Tyjae Spears, Zach Charbonnet go in the round after. So I get it. Like you just want to fade the situation entirely. And oh, by the way, guys, isn't Devin Singletary still on that team in New York too?
It'd be annoying.
That's the thing. It's like even if you're Team Scadaboo or Team Tracy, those forces would combine to be Team anti-Devin Singletary. Like you don't want him gumming up the works. And certainly, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about it, but there's a non-zero chance of that happening this year as well. Terp, let's go back to you here. Jake Ferguson goes at the 10:06 tonight to Diddley Squat. That is the squad that is owned by Gary Morgan, the FFPC Pros versus Joe this year. 10:06, and then one pick after that, Anaconda takes Dak Prescott at the 10:07. Lee Snyder invests into his first quarterback at the 10:07 tonight in Prescott. Terp, you know the NFC East fairly well. Your thoughts on both Ferguson and Prescott, not the sexiest parts of the passing game in Dallas. I think everybody wants to talk about CeeDee Lamb, but Ferguson and Prescott are interesting in FFPC leagues this season.
There's 2 quarterbacks that I can't stop drafting this year if I'm not taking the top 5 or 6 that we talk about all the time. Dak Prescott's one of them, and the second one is Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it's really hard not to like what you see. I mean, they added George Pickens. They have nothing in the running back room. I don't know if anybody can argue really hard for Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, or Jaden Blow. I mean, people have their opinions on who they like a little bit more, but there's nobody going to like pat their chest and like be, crazy on any of them. I mean, maybe. People are saying Miles Sanders is cheap. Javonte Williams, who nobody can ever talk me into him, and Jaden Blue. He really never even got a chance at Texas until a bunch of guys got hurt. So to me, that everybody in this passing game is valuable. Ferguson, Pickens, obviously CeeDee Lamb. It's really just hard not to like Dak Prescott this year. He's probably my favorite quarterback to click, and that's painful to say because I hate the Cowboys. But this isn't a favorite, topic of mine. But picking Cowboys, but Pickens where he's being drafted. CeeDee Lamb's going to get a ton of coverage. He's going to get a ton of coverage in the slot. Pickens is going to have a lot of room on the outside, and then Ferguson, he's going to get a ton of touches too. So all those three are guys that I like all of them. And Dallas's the offense, should be run through the passing game, and where Dak's being drafted compared to, this draft's a little bit different. Some of these drafts I've seen has seen Baker Mayfield go higher. Who I like Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray go higher, but Dak Prescott's price is really hard not to like. If you're waiting on a quarterback, I feel like this is a year you could do it because you have guys like Prescott, you have guys like Purdy, Fields, guys like Trevor Lawrence, if you really want to dance with the devil, if you believe in Liam Cohen in that offense, it's a great year to wait on quarterback. I know those top five are real sexy. And Mahomes, Nelson talked about earlier, and I agree with what he said, but quarterback position is real deep this year.
The other thing too, in rating on quarterback too, sports betting man Lance Turbis pounds in on YouTube. Give him Justin Fields, give him Dak Prescott, give him Kyler Murray, give him Trevor Lawrence. He's all on board with those guys this year. And even Mackenzie Kramer saying, man, I wish I would have waited on Kyler Murray for one more turn just to see if he could have got him at the 11-11 instead of the 9-11.
You don't dance with that stuff because there's people out there that'll do it in spite. And
yeah, that's the thing. And that's why
you don't ruin your structure because of your waiting 2 picks. Just take the guy.
In theory, it's fine. But in practice, I would not do it. I would not do it in practice. I think he made the right call there. And oh, by the way, ends up getting Trey Benson as well, as I humbly predicted. So
overkill.
Now
that's overkill.
Well, is it overkill? You have McBride, you have Harrison, you have Benson, you have Murray, and James Conner. I know death taxes and James Conner, but at some point he's going to miss some time. And then you have Trey Benson in there. And I know this is not best ball. This is managed leagues or whatever. So you'll want to know when you're starting Benson. But Terp, this is an 11th round pick. I'm fine with it at that point. And he needed a running back.
I'm not saying I don't mind Trey Benson as a pick. I'm not saying it's a negative, but based off this structure, like, are you ever going to click Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, Trey Benson, and Marvin Harrison?
Out of necessity,
2% chance.
Out of necessity, potentially.
Out of necessity, yes, but you're limiting your upside doing that. So to me, I would have took another guy like a J.K. Dobbins or Roshan Johnson. Whether you like the guys or not, I don't know. I like Benson. I have a lot of Benson, but I don't know. To me, it was just a pick that you could have went a different way.
Nelson, let's throw this to you. I want to talk about the 2 tight ends, the only 2 tight ends that went in the 12th round here. Hunter Henry and Brenton Strange. I know your Patriots like nobody else, but back-to-back picks, Henry and Strange. I have been battling myself in some best ball leagues this year, who to take as my second tight end. And it has come down to Henry and Strange quite a bit. I feel like I'm kind of divided on that, about 50-50. I think I have a little bit more Henry than Strange, but it's close. When you handicap those 2 players against each other, is there one that stands out for you more so than the other one?
I prefer Henry over Strange, just because I think the wide receiver room in New England, I don't think any of those guys, command like huge amount of targets. Whereas Strange, I think he's going to be left holding the bag because it's going to be Brian Thomas and Hunter show, and they're going to want to run the ball too. And they've got a couple of talented running backs, a trio of talented running backs. So, it's just a numbers game. Like where are the targets coming from for Strange? Whereas like Henry, I think he's going to be, a guy that you can plug in your lineup and he'll be okay. Like nothing, there's no like huge upside with Henry, but I think he'll be solid in that offense.
Terp, how do you feel about it? Henry versus Strange?
I've drafted it both a ton. I mean, I probably lean a little bit Henry too. Henry to me can easily be the number 1 target guy on that team. He's safe, but he prevents you a good floor. I like Strange. He's both those guys are getting drafted in a good value. That to me is just, if you're waiting on tight end, you can take them both and play a little Russian roulette at the tight end position. Both I love in best ball. Drafted at both a ton. I mean, just where they're being drafted, it's really hard not to like them with the corpse of Kyle Pitts right around them. So I don't really have a strong take either way on both, but I'll draft them both and be very happily doing so. My question, following up on this, so it does not look like he's been drafted yet. And I'm pretty sure you're a Patriots fan. Is that correct, Nelson?
That is correct.
What are your thoughts on the Mike Vrabel hire? Are you happy with it?
Very happy. Yeah.
Interesting.
Competent head coach.
Good leader of men, but can he get the team to the next level?
He was good in Tennessee. He had a winning record.
Tennessee,
right?
But is he?
They didn't have like great talent there.
That's true.
He never had a legit quarterback, right? From what I remember.
Where are you at on Drake May this year?
Drake May. I would take Drake May right after Mahomes.
Oh, so you love him?
That's a hot take.
Yeah, because
Drake May too.
Call it a homer pick, but I look at it as like when you look at his rushing upside that he showed last year on a shitty team with a terrible offensive line and bad coaching. I think like his floor is like super safe, and then if the passing game clicks, I think that's where you're going to see his upside. Because, I want to say that like he was on pace that if he had played a full season, he was right there with like Lamar Jackson in like rushing yards. Like he averaged more than Josh Allen in rushing yards.
Where do you stand on that wide receiver room?
Yeah, that was my follow-up. Is there one Patriots receiver, Nelson, that stands out amongst the rest?
I like Demario Douglas out of all those guys. I think Diggs is going to be, no matter, all the camp reports are that like, he looks good and he's, on schedule. But listen, coming off an ACL, no matter what, it always takes like the first half of the season for a player to get going. So I think Diggs is going to be one of those guys that will come on like mid-season. Kyle Williams is the hype guy. I do like him. And I'm hoping that like he could be a threat on the outside and he develops. But like Douglas is the guy that I think is going to be like the go-to guy over the middle.
Let me ask you this, Nelson. In regards to Demario Douglas, excuse me. Does your degree of does your assertion of how good of a fantasy player he's going to be in 2025, does that change significantly between best ball and managed leagues? Or because sometimes I think like Demario Douglas might be a better managed league option than best ball, because I don't know if his spike weeks are going to be there.
No, I agree with that. He's more of like that PPR guy that you look and you're like, oh, okay, like he's going to get me like 12 to 15 points, but I'm looking for like that huge upside. But I also think in best ball, his ADP is depressed. So
Crazy.
I look at
crazy,
right? So like he's almost free. So I look at it as, why not take that guy? Because where he goes in the draft, like you almost like it's almost a guarantee. I don't want to get crazy, but like it's almost a guarantee that he's like a starter, right? And he's going to see consistent targets week in, week out. There's not many receivers in his ADP range that you can say that about. So I do agree that like he's a floor guy more than an upside guy. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that in either format.
We're covering the Big Gorilla tonight, $1 million grand prize at stake. But if you want to draft Demario Douglas in best ball tournaments, don't forget the FFPC has 2 separate best ball tournaments going on. The Classic and then, of course, the Superflex best ball tournament. $125 and $35 to join those respectively. A $300,000 and $100,000 grand prize available. $100,000 runner-up prize in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament as well. Drafts going on right now, 30-second, 60-second, 2-hour and 6-hour clocks over at myffpc.com. Let's talk about what did I want to get to here? You talked about the Patriots wide receiver room. Okay. Let's throw it to Jarquez Hunter, who was the pick at 12-11 tonight. 12-11 was Jarquez Hunter. He ends up going to Don't Give a Shift. That is the team owned by Adam Hahn here. Nelson, I'll throw this to you first. We know Kyren Williams and how successful he has been as a Rams running back over the course of the last couple of years. And we know that Blake Corum was a day 2 pick last year. And yet the Rams decided to invest in a day 3 pick of Jarquez Hunter, but in a deep running back class where maybe if Jarquez Hunter was in the draft last year, he would have been a day 2 pick. What do you make of this backfield for the Rams right now with Corum, with Hunter, and of course with Kyren Williams also?
Yeah, I was off Kyren last year. I felt like he kind of had like an outlier season, and he ended up being solid again last year. So I look at it as McVay loves the kid, and I know that from dating back from his rookie year. So I think they're going to ride Kyren for as long as he doesn't break down. And I think Hunter is kind of like that insurance policy. They looked at it as like he was like the best player available. I think if they look at it as like if Kyren goes down, they don't know if Blake is that guy that can really be the home run hitter, where Hunter, is more of like that speed backs, similar mold to Kyren a little bit, but like I think he's a lot faster. So, I don't want to like overthink it too much, but I just think it was one of those situations where they wanted to make sure they have depth at running back.
So, Terp, let's talk about here, and we're almost through the 14th round here. You're watching live FFPC Big Gorilla draft coverage. Nelson Sousa from FTN, and of course Dave Terpoilli joining us tonight at _franchise12 for Nelson on X, and of course at Dave Terp on X for Dave Terpoilli. I'm at Eric Balkman on X as well. Let's talk about the 14th round here. I feel like we have not talked about we touched on Cortland Sutton. What about Pat Bryant, Terp, who ends up going to Raj Singh here as the wide receiver 64 in the 14th round tonight? We have heard comparisons to Michael Thomas by his own head coach. And granted, Pat Bryant is still a rookie. Granted, it's not like he had a long and successful collegiate career. He had a pretty good year this past year. Pat Bryant, worth the hype here in the 14th round, or are you looking elsewhere?
I think he's definitely worth the hype. He's getting a lot of positive press. Saying he's Michael Thomas potential is definitely a ringing endorsement for a player. The only problem with that is that there's just a lot of guys there. Are they better than Pat Bryant? I don't think so. But, we got Marvin Mims, who showed massive flash at the end of the season. We have Franklin there, who, is okay. Cortland Sutton obviously is the alpha there. The tight end position is, Evan Ingram, who we all know who I love, and he's going to be, pretty much a pretty strong option in that offense. Can Bo Nix really, take that, wide receiver 2 potentially to the next level? I don't know, but Pat Bryant's definitely a popular name. He's a guy that could get moved up the draft boards. Like the popular names right now are like the Pat Bryants and a guy who hasn't been drafted yet, Dante Thornton, who is, they're the sexy rookie names right now that everybody's talking about. And they could all pan out, and they're all worth shots, but they could also turn into Terrace Marshall, and we all know how that worked out. So,
right, exactly. Yes.
As we know, the summer goes on, guys get moved up draft boards. Do I think Pat Bryant's going to be one of them? Probably not, but if I learned one lesson over the years, some of these rookie receivers are complete traps because you get so caught up in it. Like, for instance, last year, one guy I was really caught up with was Javon Baker. Love Javon Baker. Drafted him a ton. And how many points did Javon Baker score all year? I believe the answer is 0. So, for all the teams I've drafted him on that weren't, a managed team, it was a 0 all season. So is Pat Bryant going to be that guy? I'm not saying he is, but Nelson talked about a guy like Demario Douglas who has not even been drafted yet. Just sometimes the safer option is the best option. And, you draft these young, exciting rookies and then they get buried in the depth chart and they're just not ready to go. I like Bryant. I'll draft him some, but I don't think it's like a hot take or anything like that. I just, I'll be invested just because I'm a volume drafter, but he won't be a guy I'm like way, way overweight on.
Nelson, Team 8, the Omega 13s, that is owned by Jay Wimmers tonight. Jay Wimmers avoided tight end until the 12th round when he finally cracked the seal here and started cranking purple. Brenton Strange, Mason Taylor, and Zach Ertz. For a player who waited 11-plus rounds to take his first tight end, how do you think he did at the position, again, in a managed league where you have to submit lineups each and every week?
Yeah, so it's the situation like I talked about, that if you punt the position, this is punting tight end here in this format at FFPC. So I look at it as he's got a guy that he believes can be solid and Strange. Mason Taylor is like a nice little upside pick because, there's really nothing outside of Garrett Wilson in that receiver room that excites me. So, like, he could be the number 2 there. That's possible. Zach Ertz, again, he knows that, like, he doesn't have a great group of tight ends. So, like, Zach Ertz is kind of like that pick of, like, let me add some depth to the room and, try to figure it out. He might even take like a 4th tight end, like a high upside guy here at the end of the draft, or try to figure it out during the season. But I've done this type of, construction many times. I've drafted it this way. But usually in this format, I try to pick off one of the guys that, win a little bit earlier, like Kincaid, Tyler Warren, Freiermuth. Those would be the guys that I'd be targeting in that range. I would feel a little bit more comfortable with one of those guys than like Strange is like my number 1.
Nelson, do you, again, this is not best ball, and obviously you can manipulate roster over the course of the season. Do you have like sort of a set team construction in your mind of like, okay, this is how many running backs, this is how many receivers, this many tight ends, quarterbacks, so on and so forth, that I want at the start of the draft? And obviously you can change that depending upon how your team goes. But do you ever have something like, at least in the back of your mind, about what you want this roster to look like as far as position by position goes?
Yeah, at FFPC, I want no more than 7 receivers. So, like, that's always how I've drafted, and it works for me. I want to be able to use the rest of those. And it depends, too, what I did at tight end also. So, if I got one of the elite guys, I'm going to take a backup tight end. But if I kind of pushed it back and I take 3 tight ends, I definitely am looking at like 6 wide receivers, 7 the most. And then I want to use the rest of my bench spots for like upside running backs, handcuff type guys.
To you, Terp, and I want to throw this to you here, there's a lot of upside running backs, injury away type running backs that go in the 15th round here tonight as we have come to the final pick of the 15th round. The fantasy black mask, that is Raj Singh, is on the clock right now. But right before he picks, Elijah Mitchell goes to Mackenzie Kramer. Blake Corum, who we've already talked about, ends up going to Jay Wimmers. You had Miles Sanders going to Mike Shope. Taj Brooks in Cincinnati going to John Terry. DJ Giddens, one of the backup running backs in Indianapolis, ends up being selected by Bill Wonky. And then Will Shipley from your Eagles goes to King Henry. King Henry owned by Keemstar. You look at all those running backs here that end up going in the 15th round. Are there any that stand out? 1 or 2 that maybe stand out over the rest of them, Terp, when you look at how you're drafting these injury away type running backs this season?
The 15th round, my leader would probably be Will Shipley. We talked about Barkley earlier. There's a lot of range of outcomes. I mean, the corpse of A.J. Dillon is still in Philadelphia, but I think he's going to be cut. And if he makes the team, it's not something I'm really worried about. I like DJ Giddens, with behind Jonathan Taylor, who always gets nicked up. Taj Brooks, I'm on the Chase Brown bandwagon, and I'm never getting off it. Obviously, the path is there, but do we really think they're going to give him the ball on a team that has to win now with a loaded offense? Are they going to give the ball to a rookie running back who is a little bit of an unknown? I don't think so. Miles Sanders, I mean, it's crazy that way back, Miles Sanders was a first-round draft pick who people were taking extremely high, and I was one of them. I loved him that year, and it just didn't work out. And you could if he's the cheapest out of these running backs in Dallas. So to me, it probably makes the most sense. But I'll mix it in and I'll take some shots. Like Nelson said, I pretty much follow the bylaws of what Nelson said when it comes to the drafting. Don't overdraft receivers. Don't be taking these guys who are just totally Jalen McMillans of the world, the Wan'Dale Robinson of the world, the Thielens of the world. Take these upside running backs, just fill your roster with them because they're easily cut. And if they hit, I mean, you could be setting yourself up with a gold mine. So to me, it's Shipley, Giddens. I'll draft some Blake Corum. I'll draft some Brashad Smith. That 13th round, though, that has some guys who really tickle me. Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright. Jalen Wright is a really, really, really fun click for me this year. I just if I'm waiting on a running back in this range where I'm just clicking a bunch of these guys, he's probably my favorite click.
We can talk about Jalen Wright here for a little bit. I was more on him in rookie drafts in 2024 than I am in redrafts in 2025. My concern, not necessarily, the addition of Alexander Madison, not necessarily the addition of Ollie Gordon. I think he is a very different running back from what those guys are. But Nelson, I'll throw this to you. In regards to Jalen Wright, it's more of me penalizing the entire Dolphins offense. I feel like the coaching staff might be on their way out this year. I don't know if they're utilizing all these guys properly, and maybe they don't have a choice because they want to keep Tua Tagovailoa from being hit and sacked as much as possible, which is why Achane and Jonnu Smith were targeted so much at the end of the 2024 season. But I am not on Jalen Wright. This is just me being a case of just not being on a whole lot of Dolphins this year. I have Achane in a couple of spots. I have Jonnu Smith in a couple of spots. That's kind of where it ends for me. Nelson, how bullish or bearish are you on Miami's team in 2025?
Yeah, I'm with Terp here. I like Jalen Wright. I think there's upside there if Achane misses time. I liked him coming out of college. I was a little surprised that he didn't really get, that opportunity last year, but, they liked Mostert and whatever. The offense was dysfunctional. So I do think that McDaniel is still a good offensive mind. And if Tua stays healthy, like I said, Jalen Wright I don't think he has this role where you can actually put him out there and start him week one. But if Achane missed time, I think Jalen Wright does have the upside that you're looking for. That's what I'm looking for with these kind of picks where, as opposed to a guy like Douglas that we were talking about at wide receiver, with running backs, I could care less about floor. I'm looking for I'm looking for the upside. I'm looking for the home run and the what if. What if this? I'm never rooting for injuries. I'm never trying to predict injuries. I'm just looking for guys because it's just the nature of the beast. Guys get injured, and who's the guy behind them that has the most upside? That handcuff type running back. And then there's a few guys where I might just have the opinion that they're the most talented back in that backfield and that they'll eventually kind of win out type deal. But with Wright case, I don't think he beats out Achane. It's more of, an injury play.
Nelson, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt just went to Diddley Squat, who is being drafted by Gary Morgan, the FFPC Pros versus Joe this year. Mm-hmm. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is, number 6? Yeah, number 6 running back. I think it's number 6 for Diddley Squad here tonight. This is a player that started picking up steam towards the end of rookie draft season, and he's continuing to get it. And I think part of the reason that he's getting it right now is, number one, I think the coaching staff believes that while he's not an ideal 3-down back, he could hold that role. And who's standing in front of him? a guy who's mostly been underwhelming by and large, and I don't want to lump him into fully underwhelming, in Brian Robinson, and then Austin Eckler, who definitely has his best football behind him. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is a 16th round pick tonight. Where do you stand on him right now? Is this a player that you've been targeting in your drafts?
Yeah, so he would fall into the category of the most talented, my belief, in my opinion, most talented back in that backfield that could eventually, play himself into a significant role. Because my opinion is Robinson's just a guy and Eckler's washed.
I think Eckler is a good. I shouldn't say good. I think he's a solid managed league play. I do not like him in best ball at all. And I only like him in managed leagues, Terp, when you can get him as like your number 3 running back, as a guy that you can just stick in there and, hopefully he churns out 10 points for you that week. The Commanders is a fun team this year, fun and maddening, because Jaden Daniels is probably going to take another step forward, but McLaurin and his contract situation, we don't know exactly who the tight end target should be between Zach Ertz and then the up-and-coming Ben Sinnott. And then, of course, you get this backfield as well. You certainly want to have a piece of this and being able to take advantage when you can. But, Terp, I don't know who that's going to be in Washington this year. Is it Krosky-Merritt just simply on the ADP, or is it somebody else? Or are you avoiding it completely?
Definitely not avoiding it completely. I have 0% of Robinson, 0% of Eckler. So you fill in the blank what comes next. It's definitely just I just think he's a talented kid, and those guys above him are just below average to average. I think Robinson's going to be just annoying enough that might limit the upside early, but if he shows flashes and takes that job, I mean, you could be talking about a potential league winner, and you're getting him for free right now. So if you're drafting these 350s before something pops in the preseason, to where we see it every year. These 16th, 15th, 17th, 18th round draft picks, they only need like one positive beat that keeps hitting during the preseason, and they're going to start moving up to where they're going to get a little expensive. So, yeah, I mean, I'm lockstep with Nelson on this. I mean, I don't own Robinson, I don't own Eckler, and I probably won't. I mean, I'm going to fade that top of the backfield, especially where they're being drafted. Give me the rookie. I mean, give me the upside, and in the league that's managed, he's a lot more of a fun click, because let's just say it doesn't work out, hit the cut button, move on. In a best ball league, a little bit more dangerous, but still, I like to live dangerously, so I'll still have some.
So, Nelson, let's talk about this here for a second, and I'll bring this up as the draft is getting into the 17th round tonight. With just a few rounds to go, Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence were the 2 quarterbacks chosen by Cracklin Lavaloops. That is Mike Shope from WGR 550 Sports Talk Radio in Buffalo, Deep End Fantasy podcast as well. He does not take a quarterback until round 13. He gets Williams, who should be on the come up, and he gets Trevor Lawrence, again, a player who should be on the come up. I don't feel like quarterbacks fell tonight. I think this was about what we have seen before. And you get Williams and Lawrence. Are you doing it right to get those 2 guys? Because if I had 12 luxury picks here before that, where I could get Brock Bowers in the first round and then load up my running backs, load up my wide receivers, and then still get Williams and Lawrence, who have separate bye weeks in rounds 13 and 14, I love that. Do you love it as well?
Yeah, it's one of the teams actually that I kind of picked out that I do like. I like how he put it together. And I started doing this 2 years ago. I was always a big, 1 QB guy. I hated having that second quarterback on my bench because, again, it limits you. It's one less running back stash that you can put on your bench. But I've actually learned through the years that when I push QB back, I want to double tap it. And I like doing that where he's got DJ Moore and Swift. So he kind of pairs Caleb with him, and then he adds Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, he's hoping that Caleb works out based on how he's invested in the offense. But I like having that second guy that you double tap that has upside potential, and then you could possibly stream those guys together.
Streaming is fine too when it comes to two players. And Terp, I'll throw this to you because we got Nelson's opinion on what the Omega 13s did, Jay Wimmer's squad with the 3 tight ends. Stormblessed, who was drafting right next to the Omega 13, Stormblessed being drafted by Chris Osborne tonight, went nuclear at tight end. Did not take one until round 10, and from round 10 to 16, he utilized 4 picks on tight end. He has the rookie Loveland. He also gets Hunter Henry, Kate Otten, and Terrence Ferguson as well. Is there any overkill there, or do you feel like how he handled his roster up until round 10, where he had 3 running backs, he had 5 wide receivers and a quarterback, that he had to invest into 4 tight ends in this format? Oh, sorry, I got you muted. Sorry. Go ahead, Terp.
That's okay. Everything I agree with everything that Nelson said when it comes to Mike's team. It's one of the best teams I've seen drafted in most of the streams we've done so far. That's no bias. I like the guy, but I would still tell him his team sucked if I thought it did. But it's a well-structured team from top to bottom. Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence, 2 quarterbacks I love drafting. The running backs, you could all tell a story, no matter if you like the players or not. But the team next to him, I agree with what you said. I think it's overkill at the tight end position. I mean, I don't mind any of the 4 players. Like, I like Theo Johnson. I like Mike Gesicki. I like Dallas Goedert. I like Tyler Warren. But in managed leagues, like, they're just – you got to click one. And you're never clicking 2 probably. So, are you ever clicking Theo Johnson? No. Are you ever clicking Mike Gesicki? Probably not. So, it's like you're going Russian roulette, Tyler Warren, Dallas Goedert. It's tough. Like Nelson said, there's other guys in that range. I like Tyler Warren, especially with Daniel Jones. I don't like anybody with Anthony Richardson. But I don't know. To me, it's just overkill. I would have drafted, he doesn't have enough in the running back room. I'm pretty sure he just has Hampton. I didn't see above. I can't see above right now, but Hampton and Hubbard, who I both like. Pacheco, I'm not really on. But then after that, Javonte Williams, Barf, Brooks, okay. But I don't know. It's not a structure that I love.
Terp, is there a Cowboys running back you're not barfing on this year?
If I'm gonna, Jaden Blue is probably the only guy I'm going to draft, and that's not with any excitement. I mean, I like the flash and the potential, but I mean, I'll take Miles Sanders because he's the cheapest. Just the 3 backfields that are really really intriguing in fantasy this year are number one on my list. I think it's a good margin is Jacksonville. I mean, is it going to be ETN? Is it going to be Tootin? Is it going to be Bigsby? Somebody out of that group where they're being drafted is going to be a league winner. You could argue a bunch of different names. I'm on the ETN train, but I still will mix in Tootin. I like the player coming. He's a rookie. He has some flash. They drafted him. ETN's not a guy that Liam Cohen has drafted, but I've always been an ETN guy, so I'm going to stay on that bandwagon. The Giants that we talked about, and then what was the third one? I just drew a blank. We just literally just talked about this 2 seconds ago. Who was it?
With in regards to what? What are we talking about?
Kansas City.
Oh yeah,
Kansas City's the third one. Kansas City with Pacheco, who Price says he's going to be the guy, but to me the price is just wildly expensive. I'm not on the Pacheco train. I'm pretty much, backing off that. The Cowboys is the other one. That's the one I blanked out on. Those 4 backfields are extremely, extremely fun to talk about because you could all, each one of them has potential that they could be league winners because they're all cheap guys. Kansas City, I just talked about Brashad Smith, Elijah Mitchell, Kareem Hunt, who still could be relevant. I mean, he wasn't terrible last year. He wasn't sexy in any way, but he still was a guy you were clicking his button to start in some leagues and clicking it pretty happily for a while. Until you realize it's Kareem Hunt, and he's up there in age, but Chiefs like him. They brought him back for a reason. So all those four backfields are definitely ones that I'm intrigued in. There's guys I like more in each one, but there are 4 backfields that are very, very, very fun to talk about, and ones that are going to produce some league winners.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys and Jaguars in particular, if you really look at it, one of those guys from each backfield is going way too low because if one of them ends up being the starter and you're getting these guys like in the
Especially the
90s.
Jaguars, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you can figure it out, and that's the thing is like, I think at that point in the draft, you already have your team, like you have the base of your team built when you're taking shots on those guys. I want to take shots on those backfields because if you hit on one of those guys and they become the starter, you have a huge edge over the rest of the teams in your league.
Remember a couple of years ago when James Robinson was, the guy to own. I don't remember who was competing against that year, but it was James Robinson versus somebody in Jacksonville in the backfield.
Yeah, it was like a veteran guy, but or whatever. But
and James Robinson was a league winner. I think it's the same situation in Jacksonville. If you're a believer in Liam Cohen, I mean, I'm going to mix in them all. I'm probably not going to mix in much Bigsby because I just don't really like the player. But I'm going to have a good amount of ETN and definitely have a good amount in Tootin.
I'm looking up because you guys got me wondering about who the running back was that James Robinson was competing for in Jacksonville in 2020, and
if I remember correctly too, I remember that year I really wasn't on either of them.
I was on Robinson quite a bit. I remember that.
Late I got on Robinson. If I remember correctly, the reason I got on Robinson was because of Nelson. Nelson and Austin were talking about it on Twitter.
Yeah, I had a lot of Robinson.
It was Robinson, if I remember correctly. It was Robinson versus somebody, and I really wasn't even looking at it. It really like either, but Robinson was. I added him a ton late because of them two, and it definitely worked out. That was one of my most profitable years.
So in 2020, the only other running backs James Robinson was competing with was Dare Ogunbowale and Divine Ozigbo, who had some a flash in the pan with New Orleans. I think the other big guy that he was competing with came after he was already the alpha there, and that's when the Jaguars took Travis Etienne, in the first round the same year they took Trevor Lawrence. And then you had a competition again with Robinson and Etienne there. Okay. Nelson, let me throw this to you. I've been dying to ask you about Keaton Mitchell here, who went in the 17th round to Mike Shope's squad, who has drafted a lot of running backs here in the second half of the draft tonight. Keaton Mitchell's getting some positive pub in Baltimore. In fact, I think we had Joe King asking the YouTube chat earlier, is he going to replace Justice Hill in the Ravens backfield this year? I think Keaton Mitchell's interesting. He gets poo-pooed because the Ravens backfield, Nelson, looks like Derrick Henry and then just sort of everybody else. But how much value is there in Keaton Mitchell, especially here in the 17th round tonight?
Yeah, I'll take a shot on Keaton Mitchell. I like the talent. He's another year removed from his injury. I usually like targeting running backs a year, over a year later when they're coming off a significant knee injury and stuff. I think it takes, a full year for them to gain their explosiveness back. And Keaton's that type of guy. He relies on his speed, right? He's a smaller guy with home run speed. So, yeah, I like taking that shot there in the draft. As far as replacing Hill, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to – that would happen. I think it takes a Henry injury and then Mitchell becomes pretty relevant. But otherwise, he's just he'll be in that complimentary role.
Terp, how do you feel about that in regards to Keaton Mitchell this year? Is a guy that probably over the next couple of weeks is going to rise up as opposed to where he had been going in FFPC Big Gorilla drafts?
He's a free click. He's a guy that pretty much everything Nelson says I agree with. He's never going to replace Justice Hill. I mean, the coaching staff love Justice Hill. They're a team that's not just like a scrub team who is trying to develop players. They have guys that they like, and Hill's definitely going to still see work. God forbid anything happens to Derrick Henry. Mm-hmm. So I like Mitchell. He's 17th round, 18th round where he's being drafted. I'll take him. It's worth the upside. If some, knock on wood, Derrick Henry is pretty much invincible. But if something does happen to him, Keaton Mitchell's definitely a guy that'll have a role. In my opinion, he could have a bigger role than most people think. I don't see him rising up that much, though. But in this range where the guys he's being drafted, Devin Neal, Woody Marks, Isaiah Davis, Kareem Hunt, Jordan James, I'm taking Keaton Mitchell over all of them.
Nelson, I apologize. We are almost 2 hours into the stream, and we have not talked about your latest work for FTN, which is the fade list for 2025. We briefly talked about Saquon Barkley right away when we got on the broadcast. We got on the stream tonight when Althea, that's Bill Wonky, takes Saquon Barkley at the 103. I know he's on the list without giving away everything that is on this list. Are there any other picks that you saw tonight that made your list that you're skeptical on for this season?
Yeah, no, there's definitely guys. I try not to be too critical when analyzing a draft, especially like this early on. I focus more on like how they're building their team. Does it make sense to me? I believe when you're drafting, you're trying to tell a story, and to me, like every pick has to make sense to me. But yeah, I mean there's guys that got drafted obviously in the early rounds too, because like my fade list is not like I don't pick guys that go like 10th round and beyond. Like for me at that point, it's like those guys are not critical to your team. Like they're not gonna break your team if they bust. To me, it's more about avoiding the landmines in the early rounds, and you kind of have to thread the needle. So that's, I think, what is unique about my fade list is I'm listing guys that I guess it becomes controversial because they're early round players and they're getting drafted early for a reason. So there's people out there that like them. So there's a lot of people that will disagree too with some of the players that are on the list this year.
Nelson, I know the other thing I was going to ask you before, since you are our Patriots guy here tonight. Travion Henderson ends up going at the 509 as running back 20 tonight to Storm Blessed, which is run by Chris Osborne. Ramondre Stevenson, the guy who was the starter the last couple of years in New England, he falls to the 1102 tonight, running back 41 to Don't Give a Shift, Adam Hawn's entry into this $1 million Big Gorilla contest.
You love saying that name.
What? Don't Give a Shift? Yeah, I do.
You love it, man.
It's probably affecting our YouTube, but yeah. So when you compare Stevenson's ADP or Stevenson's draft position night at 1102 to Travion Henderson's at 509, how do you sort of handicap what the better value is between those two Patriots running backs?
I mean, I love Henderson. So outside of Genty, he was my favorite running back in this draft. I think he's the best back in the passing game, I think, coming out of college. So I think Vrabel and McDaniels are going to trust him in the passing game. So my belief is he's going to have a real role right from day one. So I much prefer him over Stevenson. Stevenson to me is, I don't want to, he's just a guy to me. Like he doesn't do anything special in particular. So I look at it as I think once they realize what they have in Henderson, I think he is going to be the guy that gets the more high leverage touches than Stevenson.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that's the way I've been drafting him too. By the way, when it comes to Henderson versus Stevenson this year, for sure. We are coming up on the final round here. The one thing I wanted to ask, I think I wanted to throw this to Terp here. God, where was it now that I had? Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. Theo Johnson, Terp, a player that I've been excited about drafting as my third tight end. Not necessarily my backup tight end, but Sutton my face. That is John Terry grabs him as his number 4 tight end. I feel like he is primed for a breakout this year. I feel like everything is the stars are sort of aligning for Theo Johnson to potentially be the number 2 target in that Giants passing offense this year. Where do you stand on Theo Johnson? How have you been handling him in your drafts?
He's a fun click. He's a guy that I like targeting. Let's just say I draft a guy like Brock Bowers or Trey McBride. I have no problem taking a Theo Johnson as my second tight end. People are worried, like, the measurables were there. He was the camp darling, when he tested and everything was great. You worry about that offense. It's going to be bad. But Theo Johnson, he has no really guys around him. There's nothing behind him that you really got to worry about. Receiving core, you have Malik Neighbors. Everything's going through Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors is the guy. But besides that, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, they're good players, but they're not. Is there a world where Theo Johnson's the second target on that team? You could tell yourself a story that. I think he's a better best ball target than he is a redraft target, but he's not somebody that I would shy away from. I mean, if you're drafting in this range, like I'd rather have Theo Johnson over Cole Kmet or Tyler Conklin, who I like Tyler Conklin, but
But those are floor guys, and you want to be
floor
drafting
guys,
ceiling guys at this point.
If you're looking for the ceiling, that maybe the Giants are better than you think, or maybe he gets a rapport with, Jackson Dart for the the sprint. I could tell yourself. Always tell, like Nelson said, every draft is about telling stories.
Telling yourself
when it's all about structure and it's all about telling stories, and whether the player takes or what they are. Everybody has their own player takes, but each draft you should be telling yourself a story. Well, this could happen, and if this happens, then X. And if it does, you could be sitting with $1 million. And I like Theo Johnson. I'm on board with that. I'm not going to be like crazy on him,
right?
But it's worth a play. It's way better play than Cole Kmet and Tyler Conklin.
Lance Turbis, sports betting man, already saying that Thomas Fedone is going to snatch the pebble away from Theo Johnson this year, the Nebraska rookie tight end. We'll see. I mean, non-zero chance of anything with that happening for sure. Bill Hollywood saying he's worried about tight end or touchdowns with Theo Johnson as well. Nelson, I'll give you with the final word here on the show tonight before we tell everybody where we can find you and what you're working on. 3 picks left in the draft. You already talked up, I believe it was Mike Shope's team from the 5-hole tonight, saying that you like that squad. Was there any other teams were there any other teams, I should say, that stood out to you tonight as, hey, this is a contender, not only to win this league, but to get to the championship round and potentially win that $1 million grand prize?
Yeah, could you scroll up, Eric? That way I can tell which team it was.
Number 1 for me.
So there you go. That's everybody's team there. You get to see the first round and everything.
I like Team 8.
That's the Omega 13's Jay Wimmer squad.
I agree.
He ends up – this is a team we talked about. He waited on tight end until round 12 and getting Strange, Taylor, and Ertz. But anytime you do that, that means you're bulking up the running backs, the receivers, and obviously you got Jaden Daniels as well.
Yeah. I like Team 9, his structure, but I feel like his running back room, I feel like that needed to be like – when I see those running backs and like the secondary running backs – I expect to see like McBride or like Bowers, someone like that, on that type of team. So I would have liked to see that maybe. I know he wasn't really. I mean, he was in position. He could have passed on Puka, taken McBride, but I like Puka Brian Thomas start. So,
or I'll be honest with you, Nelson. I could have skipped Cortland Sutton, taken James Conner there. Still got Jordan Addison as my number 4 receiver, and that running back room looks significantly better then.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then there was one other team. I want to say that I liked the number 4 team also, actually.
Brown Terry, a guy who's had a lot of success in this competition. He waits until round 9 for tight ends, gets Tyler Warren, Dallas Goedert, adds Mike Gesicki and Theo Johnson late. You look at the running backs, Hampton, Hubbard, Pacheco. He gets Javonte Williams. Taj Brooks is interesting. Jerome Ford in the last round. Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Rashee Rice, Jerry Jeudy, Chris Godwin. A lot of targets with those receivers there as well. So I'm with you on that and liking that squad.
Yeah.
Nelson, with 1 pick to go in the draft, I'm going to allow you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can find you on social media, what you're working on with FTN, in addition to checking out that fades piece that just dropped today over on FTN so you know what picks you want to be avoiding in the Big Gorilla, the FFPC main event, and all your fantasy drafts this year.
Yeah, I'm at FTN Fantasy, and I have a high stakes package, and you get access to my rankings. You have a downloadable cheat sheet. You got my fade list. I have a few articles that are going to be coming out soon. One of them being that, 2 years ago I hit on Rachaad White. Last year I hit on James Cook. So that article's coming out on kind of like that running back that goes in the middle rounds that's going to have a breakout season. And then I'm also on the Discord chat, And with the Discord channel, you get 24/7 access to me. Ask questions every day. It's pretty active, especially once we turn to July and more people are drafting. So that's a big benefit. I think people enjoy having that access to be able to ask questions, as they're drafting daily and everything.
So at _franchise12 on X, of course, FTN Fantasy is where you want to go for the high stakes package that Nelson has with FTN Fantasy. If you're drafting in the FFPC, this is the type of player that you want to be listening to, given that less than a decade ago, he was a co-main event champion along with David Hubbard in winning that contest, which was awesome. And congratulations to you once again on that, Nelson. Thanks so much for hopping aboard with us tonight. This is always a treat anytime we get to pick your brain.
Sure is.
Dave Terpoilli at absolutely Nelson at Dave Terp on the X. Again, no live draft coverage next Wednesday. We're going to have an HSFF hour, High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, on Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. We're also going to have one this Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, with Jason Camp, multi-league winner in the FFPC. So check that out. And, of course, I'm live on the Better Sports Network tomorrow, as well as the FFPC socials, with the overhyped sleeper himself, Dan Williamson, player profiler, contributor, and co-host of the Stack Hunters podcast, along with Bradley Stalder. He and I will chop it up for 2 hours. This has been so much fun. Always enjoy hanging out with you guys. For Nelson Sousa, for Dave Terpoilli, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been live draft coverage here on the FFPC YouTube channel. We'll talk with you again tomorrow night.
See you guys.